my absolute privilege and honor to welcome friends as well as amazing runners, Vaishali Kasture and Ashnath. Thanks so much for joining this first edition. I'm so excited to host the two of you, especially because this today is almost like the end of the week when the Boston Marathon was supposed to take place. Well, it did take place actually. And I'm looking forward to everything that you have to share. So let's go on to Ashok. You have qualified for Boston 11 consecutive years in a row. And you've gone back to run this race many, many times. We are, of course, going to be talking about many other things, but to set the ball rolling and to really give you a warm welcome, I first want to know about what does Boston Marathon mean to you?
I think you need to run Boston to be able to understand how Boston, their marathon, grips you. It's quite different from the other global races. I think once you've been there, you're hooked, and you'll find that if you check out, even for most people, once they've run Boston once, if they qualify, they come back again and again. So you had asked about 10 years back. I don't think I had any plans of coming back, but there was always something that kept bringing me back to Boston. Here I am, 11 years down. Next year will be the 12th.
Next year, amazing, amazing. And Vaishali, what has Boston, really meant to you? What experiences do you remember from Boston, having gone there and run it 3 times? What do you feel about Boston Marathon?
Even for me, I don't think if you would have asked me, when I started running, I really didn't know about the Boston Marathon. But as I started meeting people and training for, just a 10K, a half, and then a full, one would hear a lot about how difficult it is for an amateur runner. It's like, for an amateur runner, it's like going to the Olympics. I mean, that's the best you can aspire for. And which is why I decided to give it a shot. And I really enjoyed both, training for it as well as running. The first time I ran, I think I had tears in my eyes when I finished, because you know that no amount of money can really get you to the starting line. You have to work hard and you have to earn your spot to earn the right to be there. And that's what I always enjoy a good challenge. So I think it was I had tears in my eyes when I finished the first year.
So were all the 3 experiences kind of the same for you, or do you have amongst the 3 races, something which was a little bit more special and spectacular for you?
No, none of, although I've run only 3 races, none of them were the same. One year was extremely hot, one year was extremely cold, and one year it was raining. And the Boston weather is famous for that. No 2 years are really the same.
So Ashok, you actually started running, I think, in the mid-80s, right? Am I right? You ran your first marathon in the mid-80s.
I think
Am I right?
85, 86 were the 2 marathons that one ran, and surprisingly enough, my first was a marathon. It wasn't planned like that. It's not something that I would even recommend to people, but my first race was a marathon. That was the level of knowledge about running and racing. Not that one had many choices. Way back in the 80s, there were 2 marathons in the whole of India that used to take place. One was the Pune International Marathon, and one was the Rath Marathon, happened to be where I was. And that race used to go past my running park. And for 2 years, I used to watch those people running on the road while I'm running in the park. And one year, I just decided to wake up earlier and take part.
So if you started running, let's say in the mid-80s, when did you actually hear about Boston Marathon first? How did you hear about Boston?
Okay, so let's remember 2009, I think, is when some of the other runners are from the IT industry, and they would travel abroad. and occasionally take part in events there if their travel had brought them to that city. Somewhere, I think the word came back about Boston being this race, which was the iconic race. You had to qualify, and it just became like, Ashok, you're doing those timings. Why don't you run the race? So I think the first year, 2010, to take part, it was almost like being cajoled. Go do it. And I was like, okay, I mean, what is this race that I'm going abroad and running for the first time? I mean, that was my, imagine running your first race and that being Boston abroad. So that's how it just happened. People just cajoled me to go and do it. My qualifying race, I think, it was the midnight marathon of all place things. So totally
And
unplanned.
have you seen the qualifying times change drastically over the last 10 years? You're talking about 2010, and we are in 2020. How have the qualifying timings changed over the years?
Oh, see, so what happened was in 2010, or was it 2011? There used to be about anybody and everybody. There was a timings, and it was a first come, first serve basis. So what used to happen was, as you may know, is that the Boston qualify opens for us Indians at around 10:30 at night. So I remember logging in at 10:30, couldn't get in, said, okay, I'll wake up in the morning, check in. You woke up in the morning, you log in, and you were told it was shut. So in those years, it was first come, first serve, and many of the fastest runners didn't get through because because of network problems or because others were faster. And that's when I think it came to the Boston authorities' notice that, listen, this is not on. We want the best runners to come. And that's when the wave system started. So I think since then, in 2010 to now, I think there's been twice when the time qualifying timings have come down by 5 minutes, 5 minutes. So.
Wow. Wow. So, Vaishali, you were just mentioning about the weather, and it's interesting. I was, just talking to Ashok some time ago about, the 8 races that he's done, and I think if you say that you've seen it all and done it all in terms of weather in Boston and in the 3 times that you've been there, I think Ashok has seen literally everything. We were just looking at, the years and how the weather was. And, 2012 was the hottest marathon ever. 2011 was cold. 2013 was perfect. 2015 was wet. And 2018, when I was actually there myself as the tour operator for this race with my group, I've seen it for myself that this was the coldest, the rainiest, the windiest Boston Marathon. And I think one of the things when Indians travel overseas, one of the things that people are fairly concerned about is the weather. And having done this race so many times, Ashok, and the fact that you've actually dealt with all of this, what advice would you have for runners going from India in terms of how can they handle the unpredictability
Yeah,
of the weather, and what can they expect?
I think don't think about Boston as a PB. Go there for the experience, because honestly speaking, till the a day or two, which is after you have landed, is only when you know what the weather will be like. 1 week before, the forecast will tell you the weather will be good, the weather will be rainy, and you may pack accordingly. But until 48 hours before the start, the weather can change. That's how erratic the weather is. So you have to just go there being totally prepared for anything. So, it's really hard for you to prepare for cold if you're living in a hot place, or hot if you're living in a cold place, or imagine rainy. So, beyond a point, you really can't do much about it. You just have to trust that you are fit enough to handle whatever Boston throws at you, and be ready to adjust your gear on the day before. I mean, it's not unsurprising. I think I have borrowed a wind cheater from you at Boston because one day hadn't carried something. So it has to be that level of being prepared where you say, okay, I have the money, and I'll buy whatever it takes once I know 48 hours at Boston what exactly is the gear that I'm going to be wearing.
Right. I think that windiest, coldest day also saw a lot of people actually pulling out of the race.
I pulled out.
As a coach and as a runner, given the fact that we Indians are actually not used to that kind of weather, at what point do you think should one actually make that decision to pull out? I mean, it's a hard decision. You've spent the money, you've gone all the way to Boston. Boston is a dream. And sometimes it can be smarter to actually pull out than to actually run the race. So I want to know from you as an athlete and as a coach, what would you say about pulling out?
Okay, so I was one of those who pulled out on that day, and honestly, on that race was chilly, wet. It wasn't the coldest; it was chilly, but it was wet, and it continued to stay wet. So when you are wet and it's raining and winds, I mean, I was shivering inside out, and it was funny at that day. The few of us who were pulling out at the various stages, all you would see would be the skinny runners. I mean, I had actually a semi-elite runner who was sitting there when we had pulled out, and she was crying. This is not supposed to happen to me. This is not supposed to happen to me. I'm a 2:45 runner. I'm supposed to be on the course. I think the skinny runners on that day were affected the most because we don't have much body fat to protect us from the elements. Now, coming from a training point of view, see, you can prepare yourself. I mean, I thought I was prepared. You were wearing 3 layers, you're wearing gloves, you're wearing this, you're wearing that. But at the end of the day, I mean, the cold that you experience there is not a cold that you're used to. The winds, everything came together. And honestly speaking, I remember I thought my shoes were cracked. And I was cursing, what type of shoes are these? I had just bought them, I mean, a few days back, a well known brand, and I thought they were broken. That was the level of insensitivity of my soul. I couldn't feel my feet. Later, I was looking, I said, the shoes are fine. It's not soles have not cracked. But I could have swore that that was what I felt, that the soles are cracked. What type of cheap shoes are these?
Yeah.
So, I mean, honestly speaking, you have to go there and just hope for the best. You can prepare yourself, but how many things can you prepare for? You prepare for the course itself, that's challenging itself. You can
Yeah.
prepare for the distance, and you hope that you have enough gear for anything that you may be exposed to on that day. More than that, there isn't much. The rest of it is sheer grit. And some people, I think, would be like, I'm not prepared to walk it. If I've gone to Boston, I'm going to run it, and I'm going to run it decent. I'm not going to go and do a jog and finish it. But doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with that for somebody else who may say, okay, listen, this is no longer going to be a fast timing course. Let me just simply finish the event. I mean, that's what happened, in fact, in 2011 12 when the heat was there. I mean, there were 5 Indians, I think, and only 2, 3 of us finished the course because the others dropped out. But in the course, I remember it was simply no. I mean, my timing was something which I'd be ashamed to talk about. I would, if you told me beforehand that this is the timing, I'd say I don't want to do it. But at that day, it was more a case of sheer survival. So I think that you have to decide and adjust. Sometimes it's better to finish irrespective of timing. Sometimes you may feel that no, this is unhealthy. To me, 2018 was unhealthy. I wasn't feeling safe. I
Yeah.
was bring
Yeah.
inside out, and so I'm saying is the elements are different.
Listen to how you're feeling and listen to your body and listen to
See,
how the whole thing is coming across. And I think that's such a valuable lesson because I find like a lot of athletes are, only about overcoming and finishing, and they feel like, the suffering is part of the experience and there is something to be gained. And I feel like sometimes all of these things also have, long-term effect, right? It's of course short term, like you said. You were feeling that your heels were cracked, but it can actually be a lot worse than that. It can, you can end up with injuries that you're paying for a long time. And I think this is it's a good. I really think it sets an example when somebody who's followed by many runners actually takes the decision to do a DNF, to walk out of a race, because I think it just is kind of, it puts that respect back into the fact that there is no glory in suffering, right? And I think a lot of marathon runners kind of tend to feel that there is glory in suffering, if I
So,
was to say that.
okay, so let me put this way. I think there are, like, for example, if it was the Olympics, I would say that you crawl, you walk, you do whatever it takes, and you finish. It is worth whatever. Most of the private races that we do, I think there's a point when you stop and say it's better to lose the battle, win the war. So, I mean, I've done DNF
Yeah,
once at Comrades because I realized I'm risking something more than what I stood to gain, and it wasn't worth it. So I think these
yeah,
also. Only thing is you have to sometimes be honest, because it's very easy for you to find a reason to drop out, and
yeah,
sometimes
yeah, yeah,
be a mental weakness. So you have to be honest and be able to tell yourself that, okay, did you try? Try. And after you've tried once and twice, you realize things are not changing, drop out. At the first time you're feeling uncomfortable, push a little more. Try a little more. Think left, think right, think water, think hydration, think heat. Do whatever it takes. After a point, you realize it's not happening. It's wiser to drop out.
yeah,
I mean, you see
yeah.
elite
I
also.
think that, yeah, that's true. That's true. Actually, in 2018, no, I think that was in 2017. Berlin was really bad weather, and I know a lot of elites who actually pulled out. I think, yeah, it was 2017. It was brutally cold, and a lot of elites pulled out. But I think that's good advice there. Vaishali, I want to ask you. Through your marathon career, if I can call it that, you've also actually maintained a really demanding career, corporate career. And through this time that you've been running, you've done marathons, you've done BQs, you've done ultras like the comrades, actually multiple times. So, and I'm sure a lot of people look up to you for inspiration in terms of how you manage to kind of juggle a very demanding career, which actually also requires you to travel a lot, you're dealing with different time zones and things like that. Obviously, the question on everybody's mind is, how do you, it's just like, how have you managed to kind of literally juggle two kind of, I mean, one real career, but even your running has sort of been like a career, because you've done podiums, you've done PBs, you've been the fastest runner in comrades, etc., etc. How many hours a week do you put into your training?
Uh, Let me be like really honest. Yes, I think it's been difficult. For the last year and a half, I haven't really been racing because I'm focusing on things like strength training. I feel my body has taken quite a beating in the last 10 years. But when I was training, I could never. I mean, obviously, when you enjoy something, you get up and you make time for it, no matter what. But so I also enjoyed the process of training. I used to feel good when I went for my run. I used to feel really nice after I did my strength training. So it wasn't merely for the fact that, oh, I'm training because I have to go and I have to crack this race. I think the process of running and training, I used to enjoy it. So it wasn't like I'm putting myself through torture and I'm making a lot of sacrifices. I genuinely enjoyed the process, but I think the piece which I look back on is that I don't think I did really hard training. I was consistent, but I knew that I can't do a lot of speed workout because that would lead to exhaustion and then I would feel very sleepy at work. So, whatever I could do within the confines of the fact that I need to keep infinite amount of energy for me to get through the day and to honor my work commitments or to travel incessantly. So I feel I did whatever little time I had, I would give best. But I don't think my training, when I compare to the kind of training people do today or have been doing, I don't think my training of that quality or of that intensity. And sometimes I do regret the fact that if perhaps if I wasn't and as demanding a job, I could have maybe trained harder. Some people do a run and they follow it up with a strength session. I could barely get in 3 runs a week, 2 days of strength. But I did it with a lot of joy. I did it. I used to feel really nice, and I used to, it put a smile on my face when I had to do my runs and my workouts. But you would rarely see me in Kantirva week after week do speed runs and tempo runs and long runs. The longest run I did for comrades was 45K the first year and 36
Wow.
the next year, because that's all I afford to do in terms of my energy and my time.
Wow. I mean, it's really what you're saying is so true that if you really had that kind of I think it's anybody's imagination on the kind of results you could. Uh, yeah, it's true that just kind of enjoying something, you don't really feel pressure. Have you lost?
I think so. I think he seems
Disappeared. Have you
maybe
lost his son or something of the sort?
I'm not sure.
Right.
You want me to pause for a moment and check?
No, that's fine. That's fine. I will just wait for him to come back. And in the meantime, I also realized that both competed the world majors. Both of you did actually did a lot of the race with Active Holiday Company. Kind of like kept track of the loop that you guys have followed. And we've had, finally in 2017, I think, was it 2017 in Chicago, that you actually got, the six-star medal. And in 2017, I remember, because again, you did these arts. You also ran Christchurch.
Yes.
You ran the Jerusalem Marathon, and that's a lot of racing. That's a lot of racing. So how do you plan your races, and how do you pick these races? And and I'm about the three. You've also been doing, and I know that you've done Bangalore multiple times. So I'm just in terms of time before the year, or do you have a calendar? How do you go about fitting in all of this?
So I think typically, particularly if you look at full marathons, I have not done more than 3 in a year. I mean, at max. And that itself I felt was a little bit of a stretch. 2 full marathons and perhaps comrades. So that's the max I've done in a year. So I used to plan it a year in advance. By October, November of the previous year, typically you would plan what races you're doing, for the next year. So if you're doing 2 full marathons in a year, and I ran almost all my most of my full marathons internationally, a couple in the country like Bombay. So if you're doing 2 full marathons in the year, the rest of the marathons, I mean, you would pick and choose some, all the halves and the 10Ks then become more like training runs where you can push yourself hard, try and do a good timing, and then you use that as a base building or as a training run to then go and run the full. So 2 marathons spaced out during the year at at least 4 to 5 months apart doesn't get all that challenging. In my mind, it's doable, 2 to 3 a year if your body is used to it. So I don't think that was as challenging. You would start putting in your longer runs about 6 to 7 weeks prior to the main race. So I think that is achievable. If you're doing more than 2 fulls a year, then I think it becomes a little bit challenging. For me, when I had my work commitments, I would have to, drop a couple of those runs if I was literally on the flight or if I landed on a Sunday morning. But you would find a way to, compensate and adjust and make up for that.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I definitely think that anything, even yeah, kind of like, race and you just race one marathon. But yeah, if you're kind of just treating it as a training run or kind of just going forward, then I guess it's easier to kind of fit it in. But with, all that you have done, it's just incredible that you've kind of been able to do all of this. I'm going to take you back to Boston, Ashok. I think, can you just test your voice? Ashok, there seems to be some kind of a disturbance. I'm not sure if it's coming, where it's coming from.
Hear me?
Can you just say something? Say hi to everybody.
Hi.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
All right.
I thought, since we are talking this, I mean, of course, we want to know all of your adventures, but we are also talking about experience in Boston. And I know that you were in Boston in the year of the bombing. Also the year that you hit your PB. You hit your PB in Boston, and in fact, I remember messaging you. I think you just finished your race, but why don't you just take us through, that experience? Because I think that experience, that that bombing sort of for a marathon running, it was kind of, and also when you go and see, things in Boston now, for not just the Boston Marathon, but I think races all over the world changed a lot after that event. Why don't you just take us through, that experience of being in Boston during the bombing?
Okay, so firstly, I think after two torrid years of 2011 and 12, which was cold and hot, 2013, when the bombing happened, was the year when the weather was perfect. I think I had two lousy experiences at Boston, but one kept coming back saying that no, I'm gonna overcome it. 2013, everything fell into place, and I broke the 3 hour barrier. Uh, One only learned about the bombing, I think, because it happened around the 4 hour, 10 minutes mark. So most of us faster would have finished and left the scene by then. And I remember coming back to the hotel and putting the television on, and that's when instead of seeing happy news and experiences and visuals, one heard about the bombing and how then the race was actually stopped. What happened was, I think the next 48 hours in Boston, everything was turned upside down because the city was put under a lockdown. You couldn't step out anymore. There were police roaming around because the two bombers were still on the loose. And it was only after some days when they were actually caught. So I remember your tickets for returning were already booked. So about the next day in the afternoon when you're going to the airport, you weren't sure whether, flights would take off, whether what type of, the heavy security, but actually, so everything finally went on fine. Yes, life marathon races changed because suddenly, security became a priority. So whether it was at Boston thereafter or even in future races, security took forefront. I had the Indian CBI came to my house at Bangalore to talk to me, some inputs on what happened, and I was wondering that, hello, am I a suspect or something? But uh, no, so I think earlier one would carry everything till the starting point, leave it there, it would be brought back at the finish. Now, as you know, at Boston, you don't even get to carry anything with you except a see through small transparent bag. So you have to now carry a spare set of clothes to wear because you're going to be reaching the starting point a couple of hours before the actual start. So its life changed quite a bit, but finally, one had to look back and say that, listen, there were bigger things at stake on that day rather than the race itself, because some people lost their lives. And it was an unfortunate thing that was the year when you actually do a PB, you break 3 hours when you're a 50 years plus. That was, instead of tom-tomming about it, you kept quiet because you realized that humanity and bigger issues were at stake that day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I mean, honestly, everybody's kind of just waiting and watching, just to see what's going to happen now with COVID and how races are going to change. Mass events, I think, are be different for in time to come, and it's a similar situation. It's not exactly the same, but it is a similar situation in the sense that it is going to be life changing. If not, it definitely is already life changing and race changing, right? In the way these events are sort of conducted. Um, let's move on to ultras. You both have done comrades multiple times, right? 89 kilometers. And doing it once, I can understand. Doing it twice, because you get that back-to-back medal. I think, Vaishali, you were the fastest Indian woman in the 2 years that you did it. And Ashok, you just keep going back again and again and again. What's the story? It's just like, what keeps you going? Is
Sure.
is comrades really the ultimate human race? What's your take on this?
Okay, so I keep going back because I have a chip on my shoulder about, I think I'm capable of breaking 7.5, and I haven't done it. So there was the third year when I went back. The idea was to try for the 7.5, and I thought I was going to do it. Everything pointed to it, but some aches and pains surfaced, and I dropped out. So I think I keep coming back because I think I haven't done a timing at Comrades, which I'm happy to be able to say that, okay, like at Boston, I've broken the 3 hours barrier. Even if I go back and I do better, it'll be a minute two plus minus. It's not, I don't expect that much more. I'm not going back for timing. Comrades, I keep going back because I think, for example, now, if when I go back this year, if it had happened, or if I go back next year, it would be to break 8 hours, because I think I can live with myself. Today, doing an 8 plus, it's good, but not from my standards. So that is one. Is Comrades the ultimate human race, the way they brand it? Well, it has many things positive for it, but I mean, again, please remember this is from my point of view, and each of us have our own level standards. So, would I call it the ultimate? No, I wouldn't. Let's put it this way: before doing Comrades in 2014 for the first time, everything we had heard about Comrades was a horror.
Ashok, are you there? I think his screen is frozen. At least I don't see him
You
moving.
hear
Ashok,
about
are you there?
people
I think it's
crawling, finish, not finishing.
Yeah, I'm not able to hear Ashok. Vaishali, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Gauri. I
Do you
think
see
I can't hear
me?
Ashok.
Yeah, I think Ashok is dropped. What about you, Vaishali? Are you kind of done with ultra running? Are you kind of done with comrades? Because you didn't actually go back. You did it twice, and I think, kind of had your share.
Yeah. No, I think like Ashok was saying, until I actually ran the comrades, I had only heard, horror stories about it. So I wasn't really sure what to expect. But, um, you know, if you've trained for it and if you've done, your fair share of full marathons, I think, you should be able to attempt it and finish it, in my mind. um, I'm sure there are many races which are far tougher than comrades, but it's just branded as the ultimate human race, perhaps because it is the oldest ultra marathon in the world, which was started around, I think, at the time of the World War. And which, I mean, that's why the branding, and there are many newer ultras as well in the world. But I think this is the largest in terms of participation. When you have like 20, 30,000 people running an ultra at the same time, I think that's what makes this race special. When you are running, shoulder to shoulder with someone for almost 10 hours or 9 hours, you
Wow.
don't know the person, but you're, a little bit ahead or at the back, and you keep seeing that same coterie of people. I think you bond for 9-10 hours, and you come out on the other side, and then you ask the gentleman, hey, what's your name, by the way? We've been running together for 10 hours. So I think some of that really rubs off, the fact that you start in one city and you finish in another city. There aren't too many races that have that kind of logistics. And the fun part is, people write how many races they've run at the back, and you've got 60-year-old, 70-year-old people who've done the race 10 times, 20 times. So it's not so much about, it doesn't accept the A coral which is right in front. It's more about just, when you talk about that grit and perseverance, 90% of the runners are there just so that they can finish, and perhaps the elite are there to get a timing. I wanted to do it back to back and get the extra medal. I enjoyed it. I would have loved to go back and do more, but I don't think I would have been able to train and put in the hours that's needed. Which is why I said, let me after that cut back and do shorter races. That was my story.
Yeah, I see that. I see that happening with a lot of runners. Kind of, the cycle of doing a lot of races and then sort of taking a back seat and kind of going into training and training and things like that. So maybe it's just a phase. Maybe you will go back to comrades. Who knows?
I'm not entirely sure, Gauri. I think I've been racing. I've raced for 10 years, from 2008, 2009 till about 2019, and I've done that over and above my day job, which is in itself, gotten
Yeah.
more and more stressful, and personal commitments. So I think I've done my fair share. I would love to do other stuff. I'm doing a lot of strength these days. I'm doing yoga. So I'm enjoying this phase. I'm not sure if I'll be back to race, but I say never. I'm enjoying what I'm doing today.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll be watching. Vaishali, we'll be looking out to see what you're up to.
Sure.
I have a question that's asked. It's actually not something that's just come through questions that we've received today, but it's a question that kind of comes in again and again. And of course, you're almost like a career athlete, right? And you also have been coaching people. And Boston is a big dream with a lot of people. So my question is, what do you think as a coach? Do you, if people put in the discipline and the technique and the training, do you think anybody in Boston with the BQ? Of course, for others, there's always Active Holiday Company.
Let me put it this way. If you want it bad enough, you can get it. Except that for some people, the journey may be quite a few years, depending on where they're starting from today. Many people want it, but when they're pushed, they're not willing to walk the path. But yes, if somebody is determined and he or she is willing to put in whatever it takes, yes, it may take quite a few years to bring you from where you are now to the Boston qualifying timing, but it's possible. What I find is that, let's be realistic, that we, all the private sector runners like us, we have other responsibilities, which means that that amount of time, energy we're able to devote to training is of certain amount, which means that it's easier if at least you're within range of the Boston qualifying time. And through the right advice and going about it properly, you should be able to do it. I would normally tell a person, if you're around 20 minutes away from the Boston qualifying timing and Unless you've already been running for many years and you've plateaued, then the 20-minute gap may be a lot. But for most people, I think I would be able to crack the 20-minute and get them to the Boston qualifying. There have been people who have come to me. I remember way back, he wanted to break the 4 hours at Bombay. He broke that 4 hours in Bombay and did a 3:47, and then finally he went on to do a 3:18 for Boston qualifying, which means that he actually shaved off almost about 40 minutes or more from his timing. So there are people like that, but because I think, see, it's like when somebody comes to me and talks to me, I try to assess whether that person has what it takes, both potentially for, as an athlete, as well as is that person sincere to put in the work. And then the rest of it is up to the individual.
Yeah. I think I joke about this. I'm going to qualify for Boston when I'm 85. Uh,
Ah.
so
You can always go to active
that's my
holiday.
story.
Or you can use active holiday.
Yeah, exactly. I can always go through active holidays. I telling people about, how long I took to do my first marathon and that I was 10 from the bottom and how I was graciously asked to give a speech, which I did give because nobody was ever going to ask me to give a speech for the ranking that I had. So, but I'm optimistic. 85, I'll get there. Vaishali, there's a lot of conversation about food and eating and race planning. And of course, like I said before, you travel a lot for work. And of course, you're also traveling for races as well. How do you manage the nutrition? How do you manage the nutrition when you're traveling for races?
So I don't manage my nutrition well. Let me be very honest about it. I've tried various things. I've tried being meat eating. I've tried being vegan. I've tried being vegetarian. I think fact remains that I am a really small eater, and what works for me is eating small meals through the day. I do tend to not get enough protein in my diet, and sometimes pay the price for that. But I think as long as you're a little mindful of what you're eating, especially when you're training really hard, being mindful and just looking at the quality and the quantity of food on your plate, eating when you're hungry, not starving yourself, and just listening to your body. I think that works well. I typically also tend to carry something, I am not someone who can tolerate hunger for too long. If I'm really hungry and need to eat, so I typically carry something, in my bag. If I'm hungry, something healthy or nutritious is always available. When I was training, I didn't over obsess about nutrition, but I think the piece that I always fell short on was protein. And it's a constant struggle to make up for it. There are good days, there are bad days, but I don't overmanage. I'm trying to pay attention to it now, but I don't think I really got it perfect. I think I have a long way to go. But I think I was lucky that my
I
weight
just think when I hear you, yeah, when I hear you, I just think it's just amazing. You've not really trained very hard. You are not very mindful of your nutrition. You kind of maintained a career which has been twice as demanding as your running, and you still achieved all the amazing things that you've achieved over the years. It's just, to me, it's just inspirational. It's just amazing that you've been able to do all of these things. Um, yeah, but so Ashok, there was a year, I think in the last 11 years that you qualified for Boston. You had, apart from this year, which is the Corona year, you had 2 other years where, one you missed because of London, because the races were too close by and you wanted to finish London. The other time, I think you were kind of not allowed to fly forward from Frankfurt. You landed in Frankfurt, and there was the Icelandic ash, and
Right. And
you were raring to go. You had this race plan. You had your shoes laced up, and you just had to sort of put it all behind you. And I think a lot of runners have actually gone through something that similar kind of feeling this year, because plenty of runners were looking at race goals, they were looking at traveling, they were looking at 6-star medals, they were looking at hitting their personal best timings, etc., etc., etc. And now we are kind of stranded in this situation where everybody is just hanging around and waiting. So we have a very interesting question from Kumar Rao from Bangalore. And he has asked, just give me a second, I'm just going to pull out his question here. He has asked that given the real road races may not take place for quite some time, how seriously do you think should runners take virtual races? Because the results is, first of all, the results are not considered official, and the rankings are not meaningful because there's no standard for measuring the results. And his question is there any value in training seriously for the virtual races? Or do you think one should really spend time going all out for them? So basically, what's your take on virtual races?
Yeah, so Ashok is going to join us here. I think he's having trouble. So let me just accommodate him.
Okay, yeah, sure. Let me just unfreeze this.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, Gauri. I think most of your question got lost.
Do you want me to repeat the question, Ashok?
I heard it up to a certain point about, I think you were...
Ashok, do you want...
Yeah.
You were based... Yes, that's right. Just give me the nutshell of it. I think I got the broad gist of it.
Yeah. So Kumar Rao is just asking, does it make any sense to sort of go after these virtual races because the rankings are not uniform, the timings are not consistent? Does it really make sense to? And I feel this is kind of like comparable with the situation that you had at the Icelandic race, except that I mean in the not the Icelandic volcanic ashes that you had. Because of which you could not travel further down to Boston to race. I mean, that was much closer. Here, people have known for a few months that, this may be a possibility. They may not be running, or the virtual races are coming up. But what's your take? Do you think that these virtual races are worth going after?
Okay, I'm going to answer this question in two parts. So first part would be not the question directly, but I think as runners, as amateur runners, we should put our running in the right perspective and realize that there are often things which are bigger than our own running and our timings and races. So sometimes, like for example, now with the COVID, there are issues which are bigger. So that's one. Two is, I think you need to learn to enjoy the journey and don't worry about the end. So, for example, if I look back and I say at that time with the Icelandic ash incident, I had trained 3-4 months. I had trained for it, and then suddenly the end race was snatched away. But if you look back, I don't think I felt really too bad as long as you enjoy the journey of training. And that's the same thing that if you maintain that attitude even now, it doesn't matter to me if at the last minute I come and I realize that, oh, something has happened, as long as I've not put all my eggs in one basket of the event itself. The event is just the culmination of many months of training. Coming to the virtual races, let me put it this way. I think we need to adapt to the situation. Okay, it's a fact of life. The virtual races are here. I mean, as a purist, it may not appeal to me. And I think there are many loopholes which can allow people to, I mean, there was a race about a couple of weeks back where some Indian runner broke the world record in the half marathon in a virtual race. Do you really believe he ran that timing? I don't believe it, but I think there will always be people who will find some loopholes to beat the system. As far as the virtual races itself, if it turns, I don't think there's a right or wrong. If somebody wants to do it, I'm not going to tell them no, because that's what they need. We need, as runners, as humans, we need milestones, something that keeps us going. Otherwise, training by itself is not satisfying for everybody. I may be happy to go and train irrespective of a race or not. Somebody else may say, unless I know what the end purpose is, I'm not willing to put in the training. The virtual event can be that purpose. But yes, it is not the same. It's like running the virtual Boston is not the same as running Boston itself. It's only, I mean, let's remember the event is only maybe 40-50% of the experience. A big part of the taking part in an event is the overall experience of the travel, the expo, the interaction with other runners, the start, the end, the post race. All of these are not there in a virtual. Virtual is just cut and dry. Come, have your meal, and leave. It's not the experience. It's like when we go to a cafe, do you really go there for the coffee or you go there for the atmosphere and the chat and everything else? That's what one goes for. The coffee is incidental. So similarly, in a virtual race, it's just that pure coffee experience. It doesn't give the whole thing, but that is reality right now for most of us. Why? I mean, if you like it, do it. If you don't like it, don't grudge the other people who want to do it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you're saying that. I have Chandru has actually logged in, says that, runners run destinations for the experience of the cities, and Raman Oberoi signed he says virtual races are for practice. Otherwise, there's really nothing. So there's some interesting comments on virtual racing. We've now come to the part of the show where we actually have a rapid fire. Because I want to finish with you, I have some questions which are going to put you on the hot seat.
Sure.
I want Vaishali to go first. I've kept the decent questions for her. And get Vaishali, and then I'll explain of the rapid fire. So basically, you need to respond quickly, honestly, with the first thing that comes to your mind, and you literally have like 10 seconds to answer, right? So if you don't answer in 10 seconds,
do I get a hamper to get a coffee with Karan?
Vaishali, you absolutely will get a hamper if you can beat Ashok in this. Okay? Active Holiday Company hamper. Amit is asking who's going to win London. Amit, you should be worried about who's going to win this hamper. Okay, Vaishali. Here I go. I'm just going to get this is a rapid fire. So I need to have my phone to in RunAway show style. Favorite post-run extension that you ever did? Floating in the Dead Sea in Israel or Oktoberfest in Berlin? And I know you've done all three.
Yes, I have done all three, but I think it was the skydiving, jumping off the plane after the race, the day after the race, was absolute great way to recover.
Fantastic. What's the top item on your cheat food?
My most favorite cheat food, I think I have only one, which is a hot, crisp jalebi.
Okay. What are you going to choose? Hotel with more comfort or hotel close start and finish?
I think I'd take the race close to the hotel, start and finish any day.
Okay. Virtual racing without pressure or competitive racing at it?
Competitive racing at an event.
We want those events back. Yeah. One thing you never leave behind when you're traveling for a race?
My watch, Garmin.
Awesome. Vaishali, you've done well, but we need to see how Ashok is going to do.
Sure.
Let me get Ashok back. Ashok knows the game?
Sure. Go ahead.
Vaishali.
I hope they're asking the same question, the different questions. Different questions, right?
No, they're different questions. Ashok,
right.
How can I ask you the same questions?
Right.
People want to know other things about you.
Okay, go ahead. Shoot.
So, Ashok, what's your shoe pick for the race day?
Sorry, repeat.
Shoe pick. What shoe do you wear on race day?
Depending, of course, on the race and the type of course, the distance and the course. Typically, right now, I'm using the Nike Flyknit Racer. Vapor 4,
Okay.
sorry, the Nike Vapor 4.
2021.
Nike Vapor 4.
Nike Vapor 4. Okay. 2021, what's your race pick? Boston, Berlin, or Bangalore?
Boston. I mean,
Because I know you've done Berlin also multiple times.
no. It's Boston. I mean, especially since Boston this year was snatched away. So I think one would go back to Boston.
It's
Berlin
Boston.
would be second. And
Okay,
Berlin
I'll make sure
third.
Jadiga doesn't hear that. Jadiga doesn't hear that. Taste drink. Beer or nimbu pani?
Beer, of course. Beer.
Well done, Ashok. No, you had no beer at Oktoberfest, okay? So this is just to get the points. That's what happens when you travel with me. I know all your secrets. Okay, what's your training philosophy? Run less, run fast, or more volume and less timing?
Run less, run fast.
Okay. Ashok, I want a truthful answer to this one. The number of girls you kissed at Wellesley College during the Boston Marathon.
Honestly,
I want the truth, okay? I know you've done slow racing too.
No. Honestly, for a runner like me, I go there and I run. In fact, I'm the type of person whom you stop and say, do you know anything what happened left and right? And I'd say, no, I was so engrossed in the race. So for me, Wellesley is just a distraction. So yes, I've seen the signs, I've seen other people, but I probably would move to the other side of the road because I don't want to be distracted. I have a race. I've come to Boston to run. Do that at other races where you go there for the experience.
Ashok, I'm sorry you cannot get the hamper with an answer like this.
I know you wanted one juicy answer, but what can I do?
Goes to Vaishali. Yeah, that's a very yeah, Vaishali, totally. That's such a ridiculous answer. And you know what? But I think here's the thing that for 2021, you have chosen Boston Marathon. So now I think you need to run Boston Marathon, and you really need to do a little bit of looking around and experiencing this. Yeah, right? And that means a stop at Wellesley College. It includes a stop there.
Maybe 1 year he can go.
And I have
maybe 1
question.
year he can
Okay,
go just for the Wellesley.
Ashok, I will give you also. Sorry?
1 year he will go just for the Wellesley experience.
Chance. I'll give you one more chance for a hamper.
All right, ask me another
Okay.
question.
This question is, how young are you?
Oh, I'm 57 years young.
Amazing. Well, I have to say this, you don't look it. You don't look it, and you certainly don't run like a 57-year-old. It's a joy watching you run. You're just a beautiful runner, and at least I have enjoyed watching you run, and I'm sure so have many others. Yeah, this has been awesome fun, guys. I've enjoyed this. I hope the others have enjoyed it as well. Yeah, but thank you so much. Like I say to everyone, you are not just inspirational runners, but you're also my good friends. And I really appreciate the fact that you've been, my first guests on this show. Thank you for the support always.
Thank you, Gauri, for having me.
And I wish you guys a great pleasure. It's a pleasure, and it's been fun. I've got secrets out of you today. That was very valuable. And 2021, where we'll be doing some real running.
Hopefully so. Fingers crossed, toes crossed.
Wish you the very best, Gauri. Wish you an active holiday. The very
Thank
best.
you. Thank you. Thanks so much, guys.
Sure.
Okay. Good night then.
Bye.
Have a nice evening. Have a nice weekend, everybody.
You too.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Gauri.